Yes! Suck it! Nail boy, I know you're just doing your job, but some of the worst people in history were just doing their job. Like, Stalin. Stalin's an absolute bastard. You know what? The only good thing about Stalin is the way he died. It was really ironic. He died of a stroke in a puddle of urine, and no one would come to his aid. He just died in a puddle of pee. And, like, the circumstances that led up to it, it's like, okay, you had this coming. Because, like, for years of putting out laws that, like, were contradictory or dumb. Okay, better than invisible wall. He died to one of his own. So the thing was, he was in his room, and there were 2 guards outside. And the guards were told, under no circumstances should you ever come into the room. And on that very day that he did, that he told them that, well, he'd probably been telling him for a while, he had a stroke and fell on the floor. But the guards weren't allowed to come in. So even if they did hear him, I don't think they did. They wouldn't have gone in. So it's just stuff like that. A lot of laws in the Soviet Union were just really, really dumb and contradictory. I remember reading, I mentioned the Gulag Archipelago a while ago. There was one story that happened when Lenin was still in power. There was this guy who was working on the railways, like a low-level employee, and he noticed that the trains weren't really running efficiently. A lot of the boxcars were being only half filled. A lot of unnecessary cars being used to transport, like, not enough supplies. So what he did was, he said, hey, I have a solution. We're going to take all these trains and just fill them up more efficiently. That's like a no-brainer. And he said this, and he presented it to the head people. He presented it to the head guy and was arrested on charges for trying to sabotage the Soviet Union. People were constantly being arrested. People were constantly being arrested for trying to, it's so hard to concentrate with all this noise. Pipe down. You're probably the guy who arrested him. People were constantly being arrested for, like, conspiracies or whatnot. I'll get to that in a second, because there's a really great reason for that, too. But this guy, his charges were, he was trying to disrupt the Soviet infrastructure and the railways, so they were unprepared in a time of war, by making the train cars heavier so that the tracks would wear down faster and they would be unable to use the railway station in a state of war. Isn't that some bullshit? And guess what? Here's the kicker. That guy went to jail. Years later, a high-ranking Soviet official came up with the exact idea and was awarded with, like, the Order of Lenin, which is a very high honor. Just stuff like that. Like, it was supposed to be a communist country where everybody gets along, everybody's equal. But more often than not... Shot put. Pull! You're nowhere near as good as that other guy. You got some ways to go, bud. You got a ways to go! It was like all kinds of stuff like that. And meanwhile, this was a common thing. Oh, grenade. Where's the grenade? Okay, good. Okay, hold on a second. Sidetrack. Where'd you get grenades? I understand you're a nail gun man. Why do you have hand grenades? That's a little contradictory, don't you think? One of the reasons that people were being arrested so much is that the secret police, the people that would go out and arrest people for whatever, or not even the secret police a lot, but just the normal police, AI fights. Steelworkers versus road workers. Who will win? The time-honored tradition. A battle that had lasted centuries. Whew. The reason people kept getting arrested was because the police... You do take cover! You take cover! How How'd you manage that? I didn't think he took cover, but he did take cover, and he kinda did it. He did that thing I hate where he tries to hide behind something that's barely hideable. You could at least hid your head behind this pot, then I might have been confused and thought you were a pot. For the 50th time, the secret police weren't paid like a flat rate. They're actually paid per arrest. And this led to a lot of corruption. Basically, I say basically a lot too. Cross that off my likes list so I don't like basically saying like basically. People were being arrested a lot. And only because mainly because the police were being paid per arrest. So the more people you would arrest, the more money you would make. A lot of Soviet police officers got rich this way. Or about as rich as you could become in the Soviet Union. And what would basically happen, the time-honored technique was to go into someone's house and get a person. Bring them in and torture them, essentially. And like some really devious type torture. Probably my favorite, the one I read about the most, was they basically bring a guy in, not even tell him what he was arrested for, and then they just leave him in a room. And they leave him and just watch him. And the instant he started to fall asleep, they'd wake him up, bring him into the interrogation room, and interrogate him. Ask him the same questions over and over again. Why are you conspiring against the Soviet Union? We have testimonials from all these people that you are conspiring against the Soviet Union. And they'd leave him there, and he'd get so tired. And then they'd throw him back. Sometimes they'd bring him in, they'd wake him up, and so this was repeated. He would go in the room, be really tired, start to fall asleep, and they'd immediately wake him up again and bring him back in. Sometimes they'd wake him up, bring him into the interrogation room, and be like, oh, you know what? I forgot what I was going to ask you. And then they'd send him right back. But a lot of the torture wasn't always comical like that. Often it involved beatings, people had their legs broken, just awful stuff, and completely innocent people. Partially because they wanted to arrest as many people as possible so they could get paid, but another reason was so they could fill up their gulags. Oh, new tunes. Another reason was so they could fill up their gulags because you got tons of free labor out of that. There were hundreds of gulags across the Soviet Union. And anyone that was in... I guess I know where the pig sound effects went. Oh, you guys are buds. Best friends, even until death. That's probably the lamest thing I've seen all day. It's weird how this hierarchy's going. I've got to make like a chart later of who likes who. Road workers hate steel workers. I think those zombie SWAT guys, I think those are good guys, but they just don't like me because I look like everyone else. Their only command is probably kill all the zombies. Oh, you guys again. I haven't seen you guys in a while. Man, you got a big mouth. Anybody ever tell you that? You got a big mouth, boy. You got a big mouth. Don't close your mouth on my account. They got tons of free labor out of these gulags. And that was just a plus. Sophisticated AI. Sophisticated collision! Oh wait, no, he fell back there. Fair enough. I'm running out of pistol bullets. Didn't I get some more from that other guy? I gotta check. Seems like I'm not really picking up ammo like I used to. There were so many innocent people that would be tortured, and they had a method to it. There was a method to the madness. The classic time-honored thing was they'd bring a guy in. They'd say, "Why are you a conspirator? We have these people who say you're a conspirator," and then he would say, "Oh, here's what you can do. We'll arrest you. We'll throw you in a gulag for 10 years. And we'll leave, and you're gonna give us the names of 50 of your co-conspirators, or less, or something, some kind of number like that. You're gonna give us this, and we won't arrest your wife, or arrest your daughter and throw them in the gulag with you. And some people agreed and just gave up random names, and then in turn, those people got arrested, and it was just a vicious cycle of people being endlessly arrested for nothing. And a lot of it was like keeping up appearances. It's like, we got it. I said before, the Soviet Union was kind of insecure. They had to keep everything just so. We had to prove to the Western world that we are a great world power. Nothing is ever wrong in the Soviet Union. Everybody's trying to mess up the Soviet Union, but there's nothing wrong with that because everybody loves the Soviet Union. It says in every newspaper, everybody loves the Soviet Union. Oh, you didn't like that. I'm sorry. Melee battle. The hit detection on... Okay. I overestimated my chances. That's fine. I'll just talk more about... No. Time-honored tradition. Every time I die, I read about a new enemy. No, I'm gonna finish talking about the Soviet Union. No, I'm gonna read a new enemy. The Steelmaker. The experiment had a most favorable influence on a worker of steelworks. His skeleton got stronger, his bone tissue became more solid, and his his muscular strength increased enormously. Propaganda bred vigilance and suspicion in him. That's why the Steelmaker sees an enemy agent in any stranger. Keep out of his way. And that kind of ties into what I was talking about. There's always this paranoia. You're always supposed to turn in people who aren't the perfect communist. And that's what this guy is. He's the dumb working class. He's the horse from Animal Farm. He's that guy who just goes along. He's the brute. He goes along with whatever the government tells him, and everything works out for him. Or he's arrested because he's a conspirator. It's funny, the writer... I'm talking about the Gulag Archipelago. The writer of the Gulag Archipelago, he actually spent 10 years in a gulag, where he compiled the novel and kept it hidden from his captors. It was only released later. He actually won a Nobel Prize, releasing it later on. He spent 10 years in the gulag. You want to know what his crime was? He was actually a high-ranking officer during World War II. He was like a lieutenant or a colonel or something. Or a captain. A little higher than one of those. I can't remember which exactly. Wow, these always end up like that. That's interesting. And his crime was, he criticized the Soviet Union, but in a very specific way. In fact, it was in a letter that he sent to a friend where he mentioned, hey, maybe this Stalin guy isn't the best after all. And all it took was them reading that message to say, this guy's a traitor, and lock him up for 10 years. Where he began compiling the stories of prisoners and kind of detailing, see, I'm on your side, bud. I'm not a spy, you know me. You know me, we go way back. Remember that time we were in that steel mill? And I made you do a neat flip? Oh, you got range. Oh, you are strong. Bones like iron. He did not see that coming. He's like, but I did everything right. I was filled with Soviet praise. I even put on my red shirt today. But it still did nothing. It's just absurd stuff like that. Absurd. The Soviet Union was absurd. And a lot of the civilians didn't even know this stuff was happening. They kept it under wrap. Secret? Nope, just an unfinished texture. I mentioned this game was unfinished. I read the interview, and the guy, they were actually kind of ashamed. They're like, I'm really disappointed. how the game actually turned out, because frankly, it was just an unfinished game. And it's kind of disappointing that, like, this was a lot of these guys, these developers, they went on to other stuff, but this was like their first game. A lot of them. They were just friends who got together and then found some developers. This nail gun is so good. Found some programmers, got together and made some stuff. The guy who makes the cutscenes for this game, he's still around. He's got his own YouTube channel. He's won lots, actually, awards in animation contests in Ukraine. And the guy who makes the music actually does a lot of voice acting now. He still makes music for games, but it's mostly voice acting. You can hear him, he plays a lot of, like, Russian-speaking roles. He played, like, the Serbian soldiers in Uncharted 2, stuff like that. And some other characters that I might see later on in future playthroughs. Oh, I see you. It's nice that they put this guy up here. I wonder if he's gonna actually attack me when I shoot him. This is a actually terrible scope. At least it makes the accuracy perfect. I heard you. Porky. Pull! Pull! I miss games that just had, like, simple games that just had things like that happen. The glass effects. Shooting guys out of the sky. That's fun. We're diverging from the horror thing. I don't think I have anything more to say about the Soviet Union. Let's consider that conversation closed. If I think of something else, I'll be sure to let you guys know. Oh yeah, another way they used to torture people, besides breaking their legs, they just thought of, like, the cruelest things they could think of, usually revolving around sleep. Like, the guy who was in there, he met a guy who learned how to sleep sitting up. Because what would happen was, they'd put a guy in an empty interrogation room with a stool, and they'd tell him to stay awake and just leave him there. But they'd watch him the whole time. So if he ever fell asleep and fell off the chair, they would beat him with, like, a stick or something. They would beat him. I'm not sure what particular tool they used to hurt this guy. But he eventually trained himself to sit up straight on a stool, prop himself in a way that he wouldn't fall over so they'd think he was awake. Just ultra cruel stuff like that. Absolute bastards. Absolute bastards! But I'm not saying anything bad about the Russian people. There's nothing wrong with Russia. Or Ukraine, where this game is developed, even though I keep saying Russia every single time. It's Ukraine! There's a difference! Nya! Niet! Niet! How come you get the automatic nail gun? It's probably because he's been doing this entire life. Okay, I gotta save right here. Nail gun! No one's gonna get that from me. Nail gun! Mom and Dad just left the house. Let's bring out the nail gun! I gotta call it again here, guys. A burglar just broke into my home. Just walked right into the door. I think I'm gonna die. Don't tell anyone. No! No! Ah! I'm still alive miraculously. Don't tell anyone that my final words, my final actions were me playing You Are Empty. This may be the last time you're hearing from me.